So, man, what's your story, bud?
Okay, well, this one time I was on a I was on a health kick, right? I mean, salads, lean meat. I was like doing, tuna, and I was eating tuna every night, every day. I was trying to level up.
You're trying to get sucked up like a Safeway chicken, bud.
I was too, man. So, anyways, I was leaving some training. Just left some training out east of town when I was in police work, and there's just little place that you go to, just a little place to go get a burger or whatever. But I'm trying to be healthy. I'm trying to do my thing. So I go in there, and here's a little tip: do not ever, if you go into a little dive place, ever get the tuna fish salad sandwich, because you don't know how long it's been in there, right?
I could have told you that.
Because you don't know how long it's been in there. I should have just got the burger, but I didn't. So I get it, and it was delicious. But a few hours later, like here it comes. I'm hurting.
It got real, didn't it?
It was bad. Whatever it was bad. So it's like. Man, it's come out both ends. I'm just being honest with you. It's bad. So I load up. I'm going. I have to go to the ER. It's that bad. It lasted, for like, it was a 24-hour bug. Go to the ER, and I'm just hurting. And I still remember it's hurting so bad that one of the police officers that I worked with, he's a big, huge Bruton type guy. He actually
Brutimus.
Brutimus. He actually. Because I could barely walk. He picks me up like when you get married and, the husband picks their wife up to put her through the threshold.
No way.
That was me. Takes me into the ER. And I, super bad. But whatever doctor came in, he gave me some kind of drug or I don't know what it was. The best experience of my life. And that saved me. I was all better after that. I was still sick for, maybe a day or so after, but it was the tuna fish salad.
Oh, man. So X-nay on tuna fish salad.
Important to note that the nurse probably gave him the medicine, not the doctor.
Okay. Yeah. Whoever I was out of it. Whoever it was.
Doctors get all the credit.
Right? Get all the credit for everything.
Doctor came in and saved me.
Man, that just got real. Well, welcome to episode 7. I'm Derek.
Shay.
And Sam.
And today's special guest is a local hero.
Oh, gosh.
Man of many mysteries. Matt Reed, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking through Airbnb, short-term rental, world traveling, dealing drugs.
Yes, my specialty.
All the things. So I'm excited. Welcome to the show. Let's get real.
I'm glad to be here.
So Matt, dude, tell us your story, bud. Who are you?
Well, most importantly, I'm a dad and a husband to some beautiful young women. My wife and I have been married 13 years.
I was there for your wedding.
Yes, yeah. Got married on New Year's Eve. And I have 2 daughters. One's about to be 13. One just turned 7. So that's the most important thing about me. Awesome. But I'm a nurse by trade. And then about a year ago, I went into pharmaceutical sales. And so now my children like to tell all their friends that I'm a certified drug dealer. So
no, he's legit, guys.
Yeah.
He's legit.
Yeah, my daughters told their friends, no, they're good drugs. So there you go.
That makes a difference.
None of that lace stuff. I grew up kind of all over. Lived in Amarillo the longest. Joined the military in 2009. Sorry, I blanked. I'm getting old now. So swore I'd never come back to Amarillo, and then married a young lady from here. And we moved back in 2013 after I deployed. So we've been back here since, and now we own a lot of property here, and so we're stuck.
Awesome. Can't go anywhere.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah, and I tell people, if I had $1 million, I really don't know where I'd live. So Amarillo is a good, safe place to raise children, and it's not too busy yet. Although the traffic seems to be getting worse.
Amarillo is still like the biggest small town ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know everybody, and then of course my wife's family's here, and they're super close knit, and so that's important to us too. So we're probably here for the long haul.
I love that, man.
That's-
What are some of your hobbies, man? You got some cool and interesting hobbies.
Well, I like to fly fish. That's probably my main hobby. Anything else is probably related to work or advancing our, real estate portfolio in some way. But my main hobby, which I've sucked my daughter and wife into, my older daughter ties flies, and she's just as good as a fisherman.
That
as
is
I am.
crazy,
Yeah,
man.
she loves it, and it's a cool hobby because you can go hiking and do it. It's not like you don't have to get out on the boat with your buddies and get drunk. You can
Right on.
enjoy the outdoors and hike, to a good fishing spot, or just bring a rod with you and make it part of your trip. But
I love that.
Do you have a favorite place to go? Now I know some fishermen don't like to get up there to little secret spots or whatever.
well,
but
it's
do you have
not, you can't fly fish in Amarillo, so that's good.
No
you
secret
can.
spots
I
here.
think, actually, there are some guys that fly fish for bass, but I've never tried it. But my parents live in Bozeman, and that's how I ended up getting into fly fishing, because they live up there, and that's like the fly fishing mecca. So we go up there. We try to go up there once or twice a year, and then usually we go over to New Mexico. And I like to fish in Cimarron. I really like fishing small waters.
Okay.
I don't have to be out on some big, beautiful river, but Angel Fire and Cimarron's kind of a good close
good
spot
spots,
for
huh?
me. Yeah, for sure.
I'll have to take you to Central Oregon sometime, bud.
I want to go so bad.
You'd love it over
Oh
there.
yeah, I've read Ben, like
Dude,
like
Bend, Sun River, like that whole area. I know you,
yeah,
and I'm like, man, I got to take you.
Yeah.
You got to go up there with me. And Shay and Sam.
medium
Well,
price.
also.
yeah.
What's the medium price of home in Ben's? Like 800, I think.
Bro, it's up there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 830, I think.
Yeah,
It's pretty high.
we had talked about moving there at one point before we really got deeply trenched in Amarillo, and I looked at houses and I was like, ooh, man.
Maybe not.
And the nursing pay, it's not adjusted to the median housing price there. So, but it looks like a beautiful place.
Man, it's crazy, and just kind of like what you described too, like just tons of things to do with family. The Chutes River waters, like it's just small rivers, just beautiful scenery and hiking for days and all the stuff, man. So things I know you and I really geek out on, man.
Yeah.
Get us away from just a whole big crowd of people, which we can do that too. But it's nice to just retreat every now and again and get away.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
man, it's good. So, like, okay, you told us who you are. How in the world, because I've known you for years, man, how in the world did you get into real estate?
So I've always enjoyed like remodeling stuff. We lived in San Antonio. We remodeled a house we bought there and made some good money on it. We moved back here. Tried to buy a house when I was in nursing school, which is hilarious because when you're in the military, they'll guarantee you a loan for whatever you want. I think when we bought our first house, I was 21 and we had about $900 in our account, and they're like, $350,000, man.
You're good.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
I'm not doing that. I think our house was 170, but moved back here, had money from that real estate sale, and so we had savings. I had a new job that paid better, and we went and tried to buy a house, and they're like, "Sorry, man." After the crash, all the regulations were stricter, and ended up finding a house in Westover. My mom had to co-sign with me after I was a grown man with a whole nother career. But so we
You bought a house though.
Yes, we bought that house and remodeled it, and then our family was growing, and so we wanted to be in AISD, or my wife did, and so we did. And
She's the neck that turns the head. Got it.
Good perspective.
Yeah, got that.
so we bought another house. I'm like, we'll just sell this one. And at the time, I didn't know anything about real estate at all. It was not my jam, and so started looking. And we had only lived in that first house for 18 months. I was like, oh, we're like all that money we put into it, a lot of that's going to go right back into taxes and capital gains. And so I was working as a flight nurse and in the ER. And so because I worked so much, we had a decent amount of income. My wife was still trying to get through school. But we had enough to cover both if this other house didn't rent. And so like, we'll just keep it as a rental and kind of go from there. And so we did for several years, and then In the interim, I had started a small photo booth company for like weddings and stuff.
Because you weren't busy enough.
And so it had become really successful, and kind of I didn't want to mess with it anymore because it was a lot of nights and weekends and so sold it to a young lady, and she still runs it full time. It's still a successful business, but that gave us some money for another down payment. And so my wife and I, just through Instagram and I looked on realtor.com, but this is pre-COVID, so this is when like finding good deals, was kind of hard to do. And put on Instagram that we're looking for some houses, and this nurse that I worked with was like, "Oh, my mom has a house in Avondale." And so we go look at it, walk through. There's some hoarders living there. There's just through the living room, you got to go through this trail of trash.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "Absolutely not." And I was like, "We'll take it."
You're like, this is going to be a deal.
You got to see the
Like,
vision.
What? And I'm like, it's, I think we bought it for 85. It was like 63 a square foot or something. It was a good deal. It was nasty. It was a good deal. And bought that one. Took us, in my head, I was like, yeah, 3 months. I'll get this thing remodeled and we'll get it out on the market. So 18 months later, the Airbnb market in Amarillo had really taken off, and at this time I had actually, I got laid off from being a nurse, which is a whole nother story. But before COVID got bad in Amarillo, the census at the hospital was really low, and so they laid a bunch of people off. And so I traveled nurse a little bit, and then I'd started a construction company with my brother-in-law, and so.
And what were you doing in that construction company specifically?
We did a lot of, and they still do. So my brother-in-law took that over, and he does that full time now. They do a lot of outdoor projects, like pergolas, fences, things like that. And then we did some interior remodels too, but their main focus is outdoor work. But because we were doing a bunch of that, we had worked on some Airbnbs, and I started talking to these people, and they're like, "Oh, dude, every night it's booked every night." And these are like houses like mine in Avondale, the smaller houses in Wolfland, and I'm like, "How much you renting them for?" "Oh, $125," and I'm like,
Do the math.
"That's like a lot of money."
Yeah.
It's like, compared to what traditional rent would be.
Right.
And so we turned that Avondale house into an Airbnb and opened it. It would have been July of 2021. And the first year it was awesome. And so then I bought more houses.
You're like, this is sweet.
And I was like, I am the smartest man in the world. I'm going to retire with these Airbnbs. And so we opened another one in Oliver Eagle, and it was busy for like the first 4 months. And then I think this is my perspective, and you guys probably know better, but the market got really saturated. And those vacancy days started to really go up and up and up. Mm-hmm. And it was still making decent money, but the stress of like turning it over compared to what it would rent for traditionally,
right?
That balance kind of got out of whack. And so we converted them back to regular rentals. And so I still have people who are like, "Hey man, I think I'm going to buy an Airbnb." And I'm like,
you're like,
when
gotta be great.
That first one, I did like market research as best I can. I'm a DIY guy, so like, try to figure this stuff out. But when I would look in Amarillo for an Airbnb like that, when we were going to open ours, there'd be in that size of house, like 15 available for dates. So when our vacancy rates started going way up, I looked, and at one point there was like 300 available in Amarillo. I mean, wow. It is.
I think that's when when I had first got back from Oregon, we had sit down, and you were telling me I
think I was converting them over.
Yeah.
I think I was still trying to hold on to.
You were.
When it was good, it was good.
Yeah.
At a small house in Avondale, I was making like $4,000 a month. I mean, it was. And so I thought, man, if I had 10 of those,
we're living like kings.
This would be great. You know? But it fell off. A lot of that was like travel nurses at the hospital. They don't have as many now. I think there's a lot of corporations that bought houses in Amarillo, as far as I know. I mean, I'm a nurse, so this is all my perspective of it. But I think they did, because I started to see houses in like Hillside Terrace, some like nicer, newer homes that are on Airbnb for like $85 a night, and I'm like, that's not sustainable.
Yeah,
but they are playing the long game.
Yep. because they can do
if they
short
cover
term
their
and
costs,
then dude, they're good.
banking on property value.
Yeah, they're
And
banking
they
on
don't care.
they're banking on equity long term.
I was cash flowing. I was happy.
So don't come mess this
Y'all
up for
came in
me.
here and ruined it for everybody.
Man, that's a big spread going from 15 to 300. And I think around the same time that me and you sit down, I remember that because you got my wheels turning on it, and I started looking, and that was the number I pulled up was like 312 or something. It was
there's
something
a ton of them.
crazy.
Yeah.
And
Those are open.
yeah,
That's not even the ones that are already booked.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of them out there.
there was a lot. And I want to kind of backtrack a little bit because you gave some incredible information, and I love your journey in that, and I want to kind of pick it apart a little bit. So when you first got your first house, the very first one, and you were like, hey, we're going to hold on to this, and because that one was a rental 1st, right? So can you talk about your experiences with having like a long-term buy and hold versus like your experience with the short-term space, kind of some pros and cons? Like what was your experience like with that?
So going back, if someone was like, what would you do again? I don't think I would have. I have some really nice houses that are rentals. I have the houses in Westover. We have a house in the Greenways that I love. That one rents well, but it's hard to have these nice houses that you're like, man, don't mess it up.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, because you guys
looked at
do
that,
beautiful designs.
well, and it's hard to like. Depends on if you're really going to play the long game, then those properties will probably go up in value more than if you buy something in not as nice neighborhood. But those still cash flow just as well right now, and so it's kind of hard to say, well, you can buy a house in Avondale and still make $500 a month, or you can buy a house in the Greenways and be stressed out about it.
But you're like, come on, equity. Come on, equity.
For us, it was just a lot of figuring stuff out, and so we rented that first one out on Facebook to some people we knew, which is good and bad. I hate asking people for rent, and to this day, I've never charged anyone a late fee. But it's almost like if you tell me the rent's late, cool, we're good. If I have to ask you, I'm like, no, it stresses me out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you know people that you're renting to, that dynamic gets a little weird. I had a rent paid that was like 30 days late, and I'm like, hey man, now the rent's due again.
You got to double it up.
Yeah. And then my wife's brother moved into that house, and they lived there a long time and loved it, and they were gonna buy it, and then they bought something a little bit bigger. But that first house was. That's the one I talk about when people are like, do you think I should do this? And I'm like, you can if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to learn, but you need a small down payment or a significant down payment for real estate investment. And then you have to look at all these things like taxes and all this other stuff. And that's kind of, so we just listed that house and got an offer on Thursday.
Nice. Congrats, man. I saw it when you posted it.
Yeah. Because we're kind of getting taxed out of it as far as the cash flow goes. And we're building a new house.
Yep.
And so we're kind of at this crossroads. Like, you have to have the patience for it to be a long-term investment. They are cash flowing, really well right now, but that is less and less every year. Every time you get those escrow statements,
Yeah.
you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
I was making 500, 3 years ago, and now it's, we're clearing $100. But if you're in it for the long term, that's still great. Like, even if you're losing $100 a month, and that's the part people don't understand. Like, I think trying to get into it, they're like, oh, I'm gonna buy this house and make $1,000 a month on top of the rent. They're like, no, not with interest rates and property values. But that one is what got us started, and I learned a lot there. And then it just kind of steamrolled from there. And that's what the other thing I tell people is, like, once you buy it, it's no longer debt. Like, if it's rented well, it's no longer debt. Now it actually shows up as income. So that wipes away that. So you can get approved for another one. And then if you have two, then it's even easier, and so on and so forth. But
Man, that's awesome. I was trying to think too, because did you guys? So when did A&O Designs come into play? Was that in the beginning, or was that like?
No, that's my baby still. It doesn't exist as like a fully functioning company. So maybe one day I have hats and some shoes I made. And, I really want to build houses. Now, my realtor they're good friends of ours, and her husband's a builder, and they tell me all the time that I'm not meant for that. So.
I don't see how. You've got so
I hear
many jobs.
him
that
talk
you're
on
doing.
I hear him talk on the phone, and he's very direct, and it takes like dealing with people is not maybe my forte. Like she says I'm too nice. Now my wife may say otherwise, but that is my dream. Like I love interior design stuff. I'm everyone like comes over to our house and they're like, Luisa, like where'd you get this, or why'd you pick this out? And they're like, Matt did, and everyone's like, like, and I'm a nurse, so that makes that even better. But that's just I like that. Like I could walk into a room and just kind of see like, oh, I would do this or this. Like,
Yeah.
Especially so a lot of our remodels have been like using that space that's already there. I'm not like, hey, let's tear out this wall. I'm not Joanna Gaines, that's for sure. But I can like look at a space and kind of see some functionality as it exists. And that's my dream. I think probably not building houses, but maybe one day in the future, like doing some consultation for people or something would be where that goes.
I was about to say I could absolutely see you doing that.
Yeah.
Like, and I know your design and like the way that you guys have your properties right now, dude. They're gorgeous on the inside, like absolutely gorgeous. So it'll be cool to see when your new home gets built and everything. Like,
Yeah.
because I know what you did with your current place. When I walked in, I was like, dude, the makeover from when you bought it,
Yeah, it was ugly.
man, like just all the elements. Like
Yeah.
you guys have so many elements and textures and like use space so well.
Yeah. And I say that, so that house was ugly, but not really. I mean, it's got beautiful woodwork,
Yep.
and all, but it was all this, that orangey oak from the
To where it all
80s.
just kind of blends and does, it
Yeah.
almost doesn't make it a feature. It almost takes away from
Yeah.
the house. Yeah.
The building process will be fun. We haven't broke ground yet. That's probably about, 4 weeks out.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm excited about that part.
That's cool. I love it. Hey, when we think about just going back to the idea of short-term rentals versus long-term rentals and the amount of vacancies that you were seeing in your short-term rentals, and just going back to that real quick, I think, when I'm out and I'm looking at these B&Bs or these short-term rentals, man, it's got to catch my eye. If I'm going to stay there,
Yeah.
it's got to catch my
Yes,
eye. So if
sure.
I'm thinking of someone, what do you think of it when you look at a portfolio of, I'm going to have, this is a short-term rental, I'm going to have, this is a long-term rental. As far as I'm hearing, maybe the long-term rental is functional, something that it could, if it gets messed up, I get it, that's a long-term rental. I'm going to have to fix it. Versus a short-term rental, man, it's got to pop.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some people in town that are really good at that.
Yeah.
If you get on there, and there's some I think the biggest component of that people miss out on is going to be paying the $250 or whatever for professional photos. Like that is,
In today's game, you cannot
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
and you'll see
Something
like
that's
you're
marketed.
you can tell.
It's an iPhone. Wow.
But you're right. Like that's your chance to see the house, especially online on that short-term space. I mean, if it doesn't look good in those pictures, then the vacancy rate's probably going to be really high.
When you go looked at, when you were really looking or go to look at a place, do you pretty much go, okay, this is a
like as a
long-term
buyer?
rental. Yeah, I'm gonna make this a short-term rental. Do you see
I'm
them
out
toggling in between?
on short-term right now.
Well, when you
But when I looked at like school districts, things like that. So like that Avondale house, I was like, oh, this would be a perfect Airbnb. It's it had a cool basement, and when I really first started, I was like, oh, I could put like some arcade games down there and all that. And then it took so long to get it up and running that I was like, here it is.
you get what you get.
Someone
Don't
love
throw a
it,
fit.
please. And it was like it booked. We had some travel nurses in there for like 6 months paying
right
like,
on. Yeah. Okay.
$3,000 a month. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was in hog heaven. But those are those things. Like I look at it. Would I want to live here, like with kids? And those are usually the ones that I look and I'm like, oh, that'd be a good rental. Like,
Yeah.
is it on a busy street? Is it on a cul-de-sac? Is it in a good school district? those type of things. The short-term ones, you're like, I'm in town traveling, so do I want to be close to the highway, the ballpark,
Restaurants.
those types of things? Powder Canyon is, growing up here, you're like, meh.
There was never anything out there as a kid.
And it was
hardly.
just this hot, like, desert.
Yeah.
And I meet a significant number of people that come to town to go out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a good area for short-term, I think still,
Yep.
even though I'm not really interested anymore, but I think still if you're looking out there, because there's a significant amount of traffic coming through Amarillo to go out there. The ballpark,
Right.
even for like these small surrounding communities, I think a lot of people come in town to go to a game, and downtown's becoming better and better. Those are like, so you probably wouldn't want to live downtown, right, if you had
Right.
kids and going to school, but if you're in town, and that's how I kind of look at those two, and because we had 2 Airbnbs and then 5 like traditional rentals, and that's the different. Like my traditional rentals are in like Paramount and Greenways and West Oak, like
Yeah.
Right.
those neighborhoods where you're like, oh, I would live there. Yeah,
Well, I was going to say, too, I mean, I know during COVID, so probably about the time everything was really good for you before the crunch of everybody saturating. Airbnb also changed their algorithm to where on their listings, they wanted to start promoting unique stays.
yeah.
And so it was unique stays, or you literally had to stand out from the pack.
Yeah.
And so just based off of you being in the space, like what were some things that could help somebody stand out in that space?
I worked really hard for the superhost status because that's like a filter, and that's kind of
cool.
what you have to like look at the filters, and I think anyone getting into it without like help and is trying to figure it out on their own, you have to be like, just put yourself in the buyer's perspective and say, what do I filter when I'm going out of town somewhere, especially if it's not a unique stay.
Yep.
I mean, so for me, like if I would have stayed in it, I was really working for that, like that arcade thing
Would have been awesome.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
because
this
there's
whole
one. Have you
basement.
seen that one in town where it's nothing but like a game room?
Okay.
The whole house.
So those things are huge. Like if you can do something like that basement would have been a great arcade.
Yeah.
If you got like some funky outdoor space, something like that's got to set you apart.
Yep.
On top of professional photos, and it's got to be remodeled decently
Yep.
enough. I mean, I would love to be able to pull that data on like people that just buy these houses and stick them on there versus people that like spend a little bit of extra time and money.
Yep.
Their vacancy rates have got to be higher.
Yeah.
And that superhost status, I think, is really big because it shows that you don't cancel on people. You have good reviews, that you've been doing it a while.
And I think the algorithm favors that.
Hey, we'd like to give a quick shout out to Amarillo National Bank. Founded in 1892, it is a family-owned bank. It is your locally owned bank.
And you had how many at the height of it? How many Airbnbs did you have?
Just those 2.
And then you had how many rentals?
5 traditional rentals.
Awesome. And I know you had mentioned earlier, if once because your advice to somebody was like, once you get that one, if this is what you're wanting to do, then the second one's a little bit easier and then easier. So can you talk about like, how are you able to finance that? Like, I know you had a steady job, you had steady income. Did you use that income for your down payments for each one? Or like, can you kind of talk about the financing behind that for anybody that's looking to get in the space, how they can kind of grow, scale, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So all mine are like traditional mortgages with that 20. Well, so the minimum's 15% down for investment property. We did 25, especially when the rates started to get really high, because that puts you in a lower rate, and so
Which helped your cash flow
Yes, yeah,
and equity.
for sure. But that first one, no, you got to save up. However, I mean, it's different for everybody. So that we could talk for hours about how you save up your money, but and really, I mean, if you can find some better deals, which are still out there right now, it's just a lot harder to find. 15% might work, but you got to sit down and do the homework and say, is it going to cash flow? Is this going to, with the rates and everything else? And you could do that and maybe bank on rates coming down. It maybe say it doesn't cash flow at all the first couple of years, but everybody needs a crystal ball for that. So we bought them incrementally as we saved up cash, and it really does start to snowball if you are wise about saving that money that's coming in, and for a lot of people, if you can just act like that, if a property's cash flowing, just act like that money's not even there. sticking in an account after a year. Now you've got this, you start to build another down payment if nothing's gone wrong at your property.
That's what I was going to ask.
So
you.
it's, it's bifold.
Yeah.
You need that money in case the AC goes out, which now a good unit's $10,000, $15,000. Or you get lucky and you have 2 good years, and now you've got a significant chunk of a new down payment. For me at the time, I was doing travel nursing, and so I just got lucky as far as my income goes. And
Can I ask, dude, okay, you were travel nursing, you had these properties, like how in the world did you manage those properties while you're travel nursing?
Stress, high
One day at a
stress
time.
levels.
Like, did you have any systems or technology or apps or anything you were using at that time?
No, and they're out there on the Airbnb side of things. There's some really good people in town that do like flip them for you if you just want to be hands off.
Some property management type.
Yeah, and there's even these Facebook groups and stuff. I think there's a lady out there that just does like Airbnb. It's like 10% traditional property management for you. Takes care of all the cleanings and flips it over, and so you can be pretty hands off. I'm not because I'm cheap. So I would do most of that, and then my mother-in-law would clean them for cash on the side. So you can. It just depends on what you want to do in the short-term space. I mean, there's people out there that'll manage it for you, or you can make more money if you're cleaning them yourself, because that's a significant part of that cash flow. So managing them, yes, it was either that's the other side of owning rental property too. Like, do you want a property management company, or do you want to make more money?
Yep.
And have more stress?
I think
Like
that's a
that's-
great question. So anybody that's trying to like begin to get in this space, that's like the perfect question to ask, because most people don't understand what it takes to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my advice would be to at least be a little handy, because you can save $150, and for some people, like, that's an entire month's cash flow for simple fixes. If you're not handy,
Right.
you better be prepared that you may not cash flow very well the entire year.
So just apprentice under Matt and watch what he does on construction stuff and remodels.
No, I'm not talking like major, plumbing stuff like that, but we've had hiccups at a rental property. You're like, hey, the heater's not working. And you go over there and the gas line is off because somebody turned it off. You don't know who, but things like that. So if you have a property management company, they're going to send HVAC company out. They're going to be there 3 seconds, but it's going to be $100 for a service call.
Right? Yeah.
And now you've blown, most of your cash flow that month.
Yep.
So if you're just a little handy, that goes a long way. And then you get in the element of, if you're not there, you're traveling, and you don't have a property management company, now you got to have friends or family or someone that's willing to go over there and look at stuff. So
Man.
there's just a lot that goes into it as far as support and how you want to run it. And those things tie into how much money you make.
If you could, let's give. Do you have another question, Sam? Were you about to ask? So I was going to say, what if you could give, 3 don't do's to the Airbnb space? What would it be like?
The short-term space.
Yeah,
Okay.
like, don't do these 3 things.
Okay. Don't blow your entire budget on expensive furniture. Like for both of ours, we furnish them with like nice stuff too. I didn't put junk in there, but like estate sales. We found some furniture at Sam's, like stuff like that. And I know some people that were furnishing their Airbnbs and spending like $25,000, $30,000. Because at the time you're like, I'll make that money back right away. Now you have to be a lot more frugal, I think, with the more competitive space. So that would be number one, because I saw a lot of people like just
throwing down. Huh?
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's going to rent full time and it's going to be great. And then when it doesn't, you're regretting those choices. 2 would be the professional photos. I think go a long way. It's usually, there's people out there, $150, $200. Those go a long way. And then 3 would probably, so don't do homemade photos. Sorry, these are don'ts. And then don't just buy a property and expect it to rent out. It's gotta have some flavor, unique style or something.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is there a specific style that you guys like to stick with across all of your properties, whether it's in the short-term space or long-term? Like you're like, this is kind of what we like.
Yeah, I would think our style is like kind of, oh man, I'm not an interior designer. It's pretty modern, like functional modern stuff.
Cool,
Like,
yeah.
Not like, I don't like that you swing too far towards the modern stuff. It looks like sterile, like you're going into an OR in someone's house.
Dude, my wife says the same
yeah.
thing.
Like sometimes
it's
you're
too
like, man,
much.
does
Too
anyone,
much.
does
Too
anyone
cold.
even live here?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
Right.
but we use a lot of white and black.
You use some
you know,
really cool
yeah.
textures.
Yeah, I have our house now. I bought these hexagon.
Do they look like those? Look
DJ
behind you.
tiles.
They're just flat.
Yeah, they're flat, and I put those up on a wall and things like that. I mean, there's so much stuff out there on Instagram and everywhere else where you can kind of like, I save a bunch of stuff on Instagram that's my style, and then I can like pull those up and look at a room and use that.
Yeah, I like that. It's really cool.
Man.
But it would be somewhere between modern and mid-century modern, something like that.
That's cool, man. Well, man, let's get into the next discussion here, because you and your family are somewhat of like world traveling connoisseurs, if you will, man.
That's our jam. That's my hobby. There you go.
Man, that is like,
Fly fishing and budget travel would be.
which, man, I want to go into that, bud, because when I came back and I saw you guys going all over the place, it was honestly, it's what everybody wanted to do during COVID, right? Like we all got so sick of staying inside.
Yep.
And the other thing that happened with that was everybody also started looking at priority, and they were just like, man, like, why am I putting this trip off with my family?
Yeah.
Why am I waiting to take the job I've always wanted? So I think what it did was force people to get out of their comfort zone and do what they wanted to do a lot sooner.
Yeah,
Which was good and healthy in a lot of ways. Well, I think you guys were crushing that aspect because, dude, it's been cool to watch you guys travel all over the place. So, man, like, touch on some of the places you've been. Like, how did you travel tips, all the things, man. I want to dive into that.
That's like a whole other episode in
That's
itself.
dude, we're good.
My jam is like finding cheap tickets. And a lot of these places we've been, it's because I'm like, I don't know, it looks cool and the tickets are cheap. So we went to like Roatan, Honduras, which we're going back now and we absolutely love, but I'd never heard of it. I know Honduras is kind of a sketchy country, but Roatan's out on an island by itself. It's actually like this big cruise destination, but
So it'll be fun.
yeah, well, we've already been there. It is fine. We loved it. We're going back. But I use this app called Kiwi, and my wife's a teacher, and then I have a flexible job, so that's a huge component of that. That doesn't fit everybody's lifestyle.
Yeah.
Sure.
So during the summer, like on
little bit of time.
on the Kiwi app, you can put in, I want to travel anywhere from June through July. You can select those entire dates, and I want to go somewhere for 5 nights, and that's it. Like where you want to leave from, and then it'll show you
All the different
all
destinations.
the different destinations.
Wow.
And it's like it shows you the airline. It's not like Priceline where you gotta like hope you're getting on a good airline.
Yeah.
It'll show you who it's through, and you could go book it yourself. But the booking fee through Kiwi is like $5 or something.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
now we'll tell you, the first time in my life I made a mistake.
The first time.
So next week we're having your wife as a guest. And
Sunday afternoon, I got an alert from Kiwi. It's like your flight had changed, which happens, and it's usually like the carrier changed it by 2 or 3 minutes. They didn't like cancel something, and we're flying Delta, so it's a good airline. And I'm like, we were going to Panama. My wife and I went to Panama in 2019 and loved it, and I wanted to take my kids back. And I'm like, that's not the airport code that I remember flying to. And so I had booked an entire trip to Panama for my family. We're going to fly to Panama City and then fly to Bocas del Toro, which is this like beautiful rainforest beach area. And I bought tickets to Panama City, Florida. And more importantly, I bought them like 2 months ago. And so I had booked hotel. I booked this entire
the whole package, bud.
excursion. Now the hotel was refundable. Those extra tickets from Panama to Bocas were not. So I lost like $700. And then I had to go back and frantically like figure out what we're gonna do in Florida for 6 days. So have to be careful on the Kiwi app that you know exactly where you're going.
But I know you, and I know you're going to do something awesome regardless.
It's going to be fun. We're going to go to Disney World on 4th of July.
Cool.
Oh, well, that's good.
And do some other stuff. But Panama's a beautiful country.
Right.
I was really wanting to go there.
You know, like, hey, guess
Like,
what?
I was in a depression for like 2 days over that.
But where's some of like the coolest places you've been, bro? Because y'all been a ton of places.
My wife and I went to the Azores, and I would go back there a million times over. So it is, people call it like Europe's Hawaii. So it's a 5-hour flight from New York City or a 2-hour flight from Portugal, and it belongs to Portugal, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. And the only reason I knew it existed is because there's an Air Force base there, and I had a buddy that was stationed there and loved it. There's 9 islands, and kind of like Hawaii, each little island is like it's got its own climate and atmosphere. And my wife and I spent a week there and absolutely loved it. Our Airbnb for the week was $500
for the week.
for the week.
Yeah,
They will get you on rental cars because it's an island. So
Just expect that.
our tiny little rental car for the week was like $1,500. So that's now you could like opt out and there's plenty of taxis and everything else, but the people over there are super nice, extremely safe, and then dining and everything else kind of in that same price range as our Airbnb. Like we'd go have dinner for $30 somewhere with drinks and everything else. So
That's awesome.
and there's unlimited hiking, ocean, and everything else. Like I would go back there anytime, but finding cheap tickets there, I did find cheap tickets that one time that my wife and I went, but finding cheap tickets over there is pretty hard. We've been to Costa Rica and Panama. Like Central America is beautiful. My wife and I have been to Europe, but I was over there with the Air Force, so that was a free adventure. And then Roatan this last time. Roatan's a really cool little spot. If you stay there, I think it's crazy because it's pretty much this one little strip of hotels and stuff, and it's not like Cancun or anything. I mean, these are like 1 or 2 story hotels, super chill. It's the second largest reef in the world after the Great Barrier Reef. So the diving there is
Insane.
Like there's people that go there yearly or twice a year just to dive because there's so many dive spots that you're never going to see the same thing twice.
So do you dive?
My daughter and I did this last time, and I was so proud of her. That was like my best dad moment because I was scared.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Daughter suited up. You're
I
like,
could
okay.
not act scared because now my daughter's here. And so, we did our training class together, and she inadvertently flooded her mask and cleared it like a champ. And
Nice.
so we went down to 40 feet. So 12 years old. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
It is.
That's really cool.
We swam with this moray eel that was like 6 feet long, and I was like, "Are those things dangerous?" But you can't ask that underwater. You can't talk.
Right.
So I'm like, "Oh,
You're like, boom, 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 boom. That's cool.
She was my favorite daughter. So that's why we're going back there. She loves scuba diving now. So
Have you if that's, do you know, have you heard of the Blue Hole there in New Mexico?
I have. I've seen the signs for it and stuff. I've actually never been, but
I mean, it's good to. I've done that several times. I mean, just to stay in practice and to get them more acclimated. That's a great place to go. Doesn't have a current, so you don't have to worry about drifting off, and it's pretty deep.
My old unit in Minneapolis when I was in the Air Force, all those guys dove, and I was always like, "Oh, that's like rich people thing," like they would travel all over the world, and there's a bunch of doctors. But this, like Roatan, it was the training class was $100, and it was like $50 a dive, and that's like for an hour with all the equipment and everything. So it's really not like
That's not bad.
unreasonable.
It's basically a round of golf.
Yeah. And you don't have to get certified. That was the other thing that I didn't know until last year. Like, if you're not certified, then you have to go with an instructor. And I'm like, why would you not want to?
I wouldn't.
Why would you want to go without someone that can help you with something?
Oh, you know what you're doing and I don't. Let me do this by myself. Sounds great.
So I may work on that process one day, but we didn't even start to fill out any of our paperwork, especially for the junior diver stuff. I don't know. My daughter is super into it, so one day she may pursue that.
Get ready.
Yeah. I'd love to be with an instructor every time I go, just in case something goes wrong. I'm trying to think of where else we've been. You know, there's some beautiful places in the U.S. too. We love Zion, and I think Grand Tetons is probably one of the most undervisited places in the United States. It is beautiful, but I've never been to Oregon either. So,
Man, where you're going, that's happening.
Grand Tetons is gorgeous, and we love that drive. Like, you can go through Utah up there. You know, obviously we're headed towards Bozeman eventually, but Utah and Arizona have this just like, and I, you know, before I went to Arizona on that travel assignment, I just always thought that was like hot desert, you know, but there's some really beautiful places in there. It's not a bad drive at all. So we don't always have to use the Kiwi app to fly somewhere. I mean, you know, there's a lot of beautiful places in the U.S.
My man, what are some travel tips you have for people going international?
So I would say if you can be flexible and use that app, you can really go a lot of places for cheap, as long as you're sure of the city you're headed to. Because I was like,
make sure you double check the airport code.
You know, pride always gets you in the end. But I was like, dude, I found tickets to Panama for $300.
Like, I'm in.
This is so cheap.
I am the travel genius.
I'm seeing you as the bargain shopper, like you would.
Oh yeah, that's my jam. I love saving money. But,
It's like a win for you.
International travel, I would say so it depends. Like, if you're taking young kids, you gotta be prepared for those long stretches of like insanity. You know, trying to keep my daughter entertained when we went to Ireland was a good time, and I got separated from my wife, so it was me and her.
Oh man,
6 years old. So you got to have snacks and iPads, and they make some really cool stuff. We found this travel hammock thing that like clips into the seat, so she could lay flat, you know, so their little feet don't hang down.
nice.
They make some like inflatable pillows. There's a lot of people on Instagram too. You can follow and pick up like a lot of those. I saw one the other day that I thought was genius, where they stuffed all their clothes into a pillowcase and carried it on the plane.
My man.
I know, right? So you can have your carry-on, and then you have this pillow, and it was literally all their clothes.
Man.
That sounds like a no checked bags kind of thing.
I'm
man.
like,
love it.
that. So that is our thing too. Like, we had to learn as a family to travel international and to do it within reason. So we went to Ireland for $2,000 for four of us, which is
That's crazy.
for flights.
Wow.
Sorry.
That's
But that's with carry-ons. And so that's kind of where that my username came from, was if you want to travel cheap and go to like some cool places, you can't take a 50-pound bag with you. Like, it's just not going to happen, because it starts to add up for
Fees.
4 or 5
Fees and all
people.
that.
And then so once you get there, you know, you guys stay at Airbnb so you can wash your clothes. And Airbnb really has changed a lot of things. So that's a big thing too. If you're going to travel international, I think would plan on staying at some Airbnb so you could at least like wash your clothes every once in a while and not have to bring
80 changes of clothes.
I mean, there's some people I see at the airport, like, because we used to be those people, and I'm like, good Lord, like, what do you need all that stuff? Like, you need a pair of tennis shoes, you know, like, you're not going to a fancy dinner. If you're traveling with your family, you know, it depends on what you want to do. But like, for us, it's gonna be hiking and
it's gonna be
and
outdoors.
outdoor stuff.
Getting
and
out and
so,
about.
like, we'll eat at McDonald's if we have to. Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool, man. What are the places that you have that you want to go for the future? Like, what are some places you haven't been yet?
Ooh, I would say those long flights. So Australia, Thailand, some of those places where you look at those flight times and you're like, with younger kids, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like a challenge at that
like
point.
12 hours on an airplane.
Oh,
I
man.
can't do it.
Oh,
My wife and I were fortunate enough to go through Europe, but I really want to take my kids through there, because that's one of those places you can land one spot and hop on a train and go to 10 different countries if you want to. I loved Belgium. I thought the people there were awesome, and it was beautiful. My daughter and I, my small group leader, this was his idea, and he passed it on to me, and I think it's great. But she's turned 13. And so me and her are going to go on a trip, and she gets to pick anywhere in the continental U.S., which I keep having to use that word. She's like, I want to go to Hawaii.
contiguous states, honey.
Yes. I'm like, it's got to be, you know.
It has to touch another state.
What was she telling me? St. Thomas is, you know, technically.
Yeah.
Part. I'm like, yeah. Again, continental U.S. So she gets to pick a trip. We're gonna go for 3 or 4 nights somewhere in the U.S. Because she's gonna be a teenager now, and there's a lot that goes with that. And, I'm really looking forward to that this summer.
That's really cool, man.
So I thought that was a cool idea. And then my wife and I talked about it. I think when she turns 16 or 17, somewhere where she's about to graduate, her and my wife are gonna go somewhere. And then we'll do the same thing with my younger daughter. But
that is really cool.
Awesome.
She's still trying to decide. She's San Diego, or I want to go. Boston is an awesome city. I want her to see Boston. I was trying to talk her into going to the Pacific Northwest, but that's selfish of me.
Hey, there's
She's
40
like,
lakes in like 12 miles.
I'm like, you know how much fly fishing we do?
Oh man.
She wants to do something like San Diego, which we loved when we went. The zoo is probably the most amazing place I've been in my life as far as zoos go. I think she really wants to go back there. So
That's cool.
probably where we'll be.
Man, I love it. Any other questions?
Man, I don't think
It's
so.
been awesome.
Dude,
I love
any
it.
last travel tips or any last
Ooh, I would say I tell a lot of people because they ask how we afford to go to all these places, and one, it's because I'm a drug dealer, but two, if you can be
Certified.
flexible with those
Certified, though.
dates. I guess the biggest thing I didn't mention was we probably almost never fly out of Amarillo, ever. So all those cheap places we've gone, Ireland, we flew out of Denver, Honduras, we flew out of Dallas. We typically fly out of Dallas.
Okay.
so you'll drive down, fly out of
you'll
that to save ticket, airline
Yeah,
airline tickets.
so Ireland was $2,000 round trip for 4 people. Out of Amarillo, it was going to be about $8,000.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That's worth
That's
the
it.
drive.
That's
Yeah.
a little difference.
Yeah.
Just a
So
little
and that
bit.
Kiwi app will let you do that, where you can put in Denver, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Albuquerque, Amarillo all at once, and search all those things, and,
Oh,
and
man.
it'll tell you where to
Makes
do
it easy.
Yeah.
Makes it easy, man.
So
I love that.
Man, we appreciate you being on the show, Matt. Appreciate you a
yeah,
ton.
this is a good time.
Man.
Thanks for the info.
Man, yeah, thanks, guys. Also, where can people find your travel stuff at? All the stuff. How can people find you, man?
Oh man, my stuff's private. So.
Oh,
My design page is not A&O Designs, and then we are trying to start that travel Instagram.
if you do, and I will say too on A&O Designs, like go check it out, man. Their design's insanely good. So go get some ideas. Send them some messages. Maybe you can apprentice under them and learn some stuff.
for sure.
My wife's gonna hire me under you for me. I know that's gonna happen. So, man, I appreciate you a ton, brother.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
coming on,
Pleasure.
man.